May 18, 1972 - In speaking of the coming of world government, Roy M. Ash, director of the Office of Management and Budget, declares that, within 2 decades the institutional framework for a world economic community will be in place, and aspects of individual sovereignty will be given over to a supranational authority. 1973 - The Trilateral Commission is established. Banker David Rockefeller organizes this new private body and chooses Zbigniew Brzezinski, later National Security Advisor to President Carter, as the Commission's first director and invites Jimmy Carter to become a founding member. 1973 - Humanist Manifesto 2 is published. The next century can be and should be the humanistic century. We stand at the dawn of a new age, a secular society on a planetary scale. As non-theists we begin with humans not God, nature not deity. We deplore the division of humankind on nationalistic grounds. Thus we look to the development of a system of world law and a world order based upon transnational federal government. The true revolution is occurring. April 1974 - Former U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary of State, Trilateralist and CFR member Richard Gardner's article The Hard Road to World Order is published in the CFR's Foreign Affairs, where he states that the House of World Order will have to be built from the bottom up rather than from the top down. But an end run around national sovereignty, eroding it piece by piece, will accomplish much more than the old-fashioned frontal assault. 1974 - The World Conference of Religion for Peace, held in Louvain, Belgium, is held. Douglas Roach presents a report entitled We Can Achieve a New World Order. The UN calls for wealth redistribution in a report entitled New International Economic Order. The UN General Assembly outlines a plan to redistribute the wealth from the rich to the poor nations. 1975 - A study titled A New World Order is published by the Center of International Studies, Woodrow Wilson School of Public and International Studies, Princeton University. 1975 - In Congress, 32 senators and 92 representatives sign a Declaration of Interdependence, written by historian Henry Steele Commager. The declaration states that we must join with others to bring forth a new world order. Narrow notions of national sovereignty must not be permitted to curtail that obligation. Congresswoman Marjorie Holt refuses to sign the declaration, saying, it calls for the surrender of our national sovereignty to international organizations. It declares that our economy should be regulated by international authorities. It proposes that we enter a new world order that would redistribute the wealth created by the American people. 1975 - Retired Navy Admiral Chester Ward, former Judge Advocate General of the U.S. Navy and former CFR member, writes in a critique that the goal of the CFR is the submergence of U.S. sovereignty and national independence into an all-powerful one-world government. 1975 - Kissinger on the Couch is published. Authors Phyllis Schlafly and former CFR member Chester Ward state, once the ruling members of the CFR have decided that the U.S. government should espouse a particular policy, the very substantial research facilities of the CFR are put to work to develop arguments, intellectual and emotional, to support the new policy and to confound, discredit, intellectually and politically, any opposition. 1976 - Rio Reshaping the International Order is published by the Globalist Club of Rome, calling for a new international order, including an economic redistribution of wealth. 1977 - The Third Triad World Order is published. Author Harlan Cleveland of the Aspen Institute for Humanistic Studies calls for changing Americans' attitudes and institutions, for complete disarmament except for international soldiers, and for individual entitlement to food, health and education. 1977 - Imperial Brain Trust by Lawrence Shoup and William Minder is published. The book takes a critical look at the Council on Foreign Relations with chapters such as Shaping a New World Order, the Council's Blueprint for Global Hegemony, 1939 to 1944, and Toward the 1980s, the Council's Plans for a New World Order. 1977 The Trilateral Connection appears in the July edition of Atlantic Monthly. Written by Jeremiah Novak, it says, for the third time in this century, a group of American schools, businessmen, and government officials is planning to fashion a new world order. 1977 Leading educator Mortimer Adler publishes Philosopher at Large, in which he says, if local civil government is necessary for local civil peace, then world civil government is necessary for world peace. 1979 Barry Goldwater, retiring Republican senator from Arizona, publishes his autobiography with no apologies. He writes, in my view, the Trilateral Commission represents a skillful, coordinated effort to seize control and consolidate the four centers of power political, monetary, intellectual, and ecclesiastical. All this is to be done in the interest of creating a more peaceful, more productive world community. What the trilateralists truly intend is the creation of a worldwide economic power superior to the political governments of the nation-states involved. They believe the abundant materialism they propose to create will overwhelm existing differences. As managers and creators of the system, they will rule the future. 1984 The Power to Lead is published. Author James McGregor Burns admits, the framers of the U.S. Constitution have simply been too shrewd for us. They have outwitted us. They designed separate institutions that cannot be unified by mechanical linkages, frail bridges, tinkering. If we are to turn the founders upside down we must directly confront the constitutional structure they erected. 1985 Norman Cousins, the honorary chairman of Planetary Citizens for the World we chose, is quoted in Human Events, world government is coming, in fact, it is inevitable. No arguments for or against it can change that fact. Cousins was also president of the World Federalists Association, an affiliate of the World Association for World Federation WAF, headquartered in Amsterdam. WAF is a leading force for world federal government and is accredited by the UN as a non-governmental organization. 1987 The Secret Constitution and the Need for Constitutional Change is sponsored in part by the Rockefeller Foundation. Some thoughts of author Arthur S. Miller are, a pervasive system of thought control exists in the United States. The citizenry is indoctrinated by employment of the mass media and the system of public education. People are told what to think about. The old order is crumbling. Nationalism should be seen as a dangerous social disease. A new vision is required to plan and manage the future, a global vision that will transcend national boundaries and eliminate the poison of nationalistic solutions. A new constitution is necessary. 1988 Former Undersecretary of State and CFR member George Ball in a January 24 interview in the New York Times says, the Cold War should no longer be the kind of obsessive concern that it is. Neither side is going to attack the other deliberately. If we could internationalize by using the UN in conjunction with the Soviet Union, because we now no longer have to fear, in most cases, a Soviet veto, then we could begin to transform the shape of the world and might get the UN back to doing something useful. Sooner or later we are going to have to face restructuring our institutions so that they are not confined merely to the nation-states. Start first on a regional and ultimately you could move to a world basis. December 7, 1988 In an address to the UN, Mikhail Gorbachev calls for a mutual consensus. World progress is only possible through a search for universal human consensus as we move forward to a new world order.